What's going on, everybody? It's PT Sports 84, aka Pete Toll, back with another NBA 2K24 video. Today is January 25th, 2024. 2K put out the fifth ratings update for NBA 2K24. With me, I got a special guest, the real 2K insider, aka John Markisch. John, what's going on, man? How you been?
I am great, Pete. How are you?
I'm good. For those that want to check out the written portion of this video, you can go over to the Operation Sports thread. I already put it up there. Looks like a light update, John, but we're going to roll through it anyway. We're going to talk about the Adrian Griffin firing, how you feel about Doc Rivers coming on, Terry Rozier to the Heat, and a couple other things. So let's jump right into it. We got the Philadelphia 76ers. Looking at their changes, I'm just going to roll through them real quick, and then you can talk about kind of some of the minute details for each of the players. Tobias Harris goes +1 to an 83 overall. Kelly Oubre down 1 to a 79 overall. Nick Batum goes +1 to a 76 overall. And Marcus Morris Sr. -1 to a 74 overall. What stands out to you as far as the Sixers changes?
Well, I guess probably the crux of this update isn't what changed, but it's what didn't change, as it is a pretty light update. Um, if you think about the Sixers over the last 2 weeks, Joel Embiid has been the guy for them, and he did not have an overall rating change. Obviously, he's already at a 98 overall. Kind of hard to update him. Like, he's already maxed out probably in a lot of attributes, but they definitely should have like updated some of his badges or whatever. Over his during this update, he's averaging 44 points per game, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, shooting 56% from the field, 38% from 3, 91% from the line. He's taking 15.6 free throw attempts per game in 35 minutes a game. Like absolutely insane. I don't think we've the last time we saw a center dominate at this level had to have been Shaq at various points in his career. So I would have been okay with Embiid going up to a 99 overall. Yeah, he's looking like if he gets the minimum games played, uh, he'll be able to qualify for MVP. And then win it for a second year in a row. It's going to be so awkward at the end of the year if he plays like 66 games. He doesn't qualify for any awards.
Yeah, it's right now he's the runaway choice. Like people want to argue Jokic, and yes, he's a great center, but he's not putting up what Embiid's doing this year. We talked about in the pre-show Kelly Oubre um, going down. It's not really the lack of production with Oubre; it's the lack of shot attempts, but that's because of Embiid. So I don't
Yeah,
know.
there's only so many touches you can have during a 48-minute game. So, when a guy like Embiid is going off, it would actually make sense that other players on the team would go down in rating just because they're not getting shots up. Kelly Oubre, he doesn't do anything on the court really besides score. He only averaged like 9 points per game over this stretch in 27 minutes per game. And obviously, he's not, I think he averaged like zero point 0.4 assists. So he's not even like helping
Yeah,
Embiid score, which is kind of funny. So just like really briefly going through his attributes, and we're not going to get this macro on each team, but like the three main things that 2K ever changes in these updates is intangibles. They didn't touch it for this time for Oubre, but I noticed his offensive consistency. I don't know exactly when they changed some of these attributes because I track what they start with at the beginning of the year, and then I see what they do I just checked today what these are. So he's at an 80 offensive consistency. He started the year at a 98. His shot IQ is a little bit lower, and then like they dropped his pass IQ by 5 points. So like none of these really affect how the user plays with Kelly Oubre. These are more like AI type of attributes.
right. I think overall, like looking at it in the grand scheme of things, a lot of people focus on the +1, -1, and then the first thing people go to is like, oh, the intangibles change. They don't really look at the individual value of the ratings, which, in my opinion, has always been more important than necessarily the overall. The overall is what dictates kind of where the AI plays them in the rotation, and things like that. But That's
Yeah,
just me.
the overall definitely more cosmetic than like a gameplay on the court function. At least it definitely functions more with the team rotations and whatnot. Which on that note, like Marcus Morris dropping to a 74 overall in this update, that gives him a lower rating than Mo Bamba, and that's really one of our biggest criticisms with the way that 2K handles the roster is they make these changes based on the production that these guys have on the court, but then they don't look at the context of the rest of the team. Mo Bamba's barely been in the rotation, and the reason why his rating hasn't dropped is because he doesn't play and give himself an opportunity for his rating to drop. He's actually been hurt the last 5 games, so really didn't even play at all during this update cycle.
Yeah, and when he does play, he doesn't seem to be a favorite of Nick Nurse, and it comes down to how hard you're going to play on defense for Nick Nurse. But another note for the Sixers, just really quick, just a housekeeping note: Robert Covington and Anthony Melton both got injury designations. It looks like Covington's out a month, and then Melton, who knows with the back injury, he had a lumbar spine issue. Um, he's they're saying a week. I don't know. Oubre's basically taken the two guard spot, and that's where he started for Melton in that interim. We'll see what happens. Also, the trade deadline being February 8th, the Sixers have to go get some pieces just to be able to compete in the East, I think. But let's jump over to the bigger news with the Milwaukee Bucks. Let's run through real quick with the ratings, and then we'll get to the bigger news with them. But Brooke Lopez and Bobby Portis both go a +1 to an 82 overall, +1 for Andre Jackson Jr. to a 73 overall. But the bigger news overall is Doc Rivers is now the head coach of the Milwaukee Bucks. Adrian Griffin is out. John, what do you think? The news broke. What do you think contributed to Adrian Griffin's dismissal? And then what do you think of Doc Rivers taking the helm?
Well, the Adrian Griffin news that was the big bombshell. Like, wow, the Bucks really went ahead and did it. We'd kind of seen the red flags throughout the year, so it wasn't like hugely surprising. Like the news itself was more of a shock than the actual result of it. Um, I think Adrian Griffin was put in a really difficult spot. The expectations were just too high for a rookie head coach. I really feel bad for him because he interviewed 13 times for head coaching positions before he finally got this one, and then he didn't even make it through the year. Um, the Milwaukee Bucks, they moved on from Mike Budenholzer during the offseason. They're the number one seed and they lose in the first round. So obviously, big disappointment. The flaws that Bud has as a coach, for them to go from Bud to Doc Rivers, like the issue with Bud is he doesn't make adjustments. Like this is their game plan. They're going to play drop, and if the teams are going to bomb threes, so be it. He's not going to change anything whatsoever, which makes him a poor playoff coach because he's not making the necessary adjustments. Doc Rivers replacing him effectively. Like Doc Rivers' weakness as a coach also is making
Making adjustments,
adjustments
yes.
during like
Especially in the
a playoff
playoffs.
series.
Yes. It's awful.
So to go from like point A to point C, with Griffin as like the interim like in between, where they realize that like going from an experienced coach like Bud to a rookie like Griffin, who was, he was getting questioned by the players a little bit. He implemented a defensive scheme that the players had to tell him maybe Brooke Lopez should be playing drop rather than like switching it like at the top of the key. Let's stick with what works. At that point, they should have just stuck with Bud as the coach. What do you think?
I mean, that's exactly what I think. For the fact that Adrian Griffin tried to implement a Toronto system where they had smaller, switchable, basically hybrid wings playing the bigger positions. You got Giannis that's the hybrid wing, but like outside of that, it's like, okay, Lopez is not going to be able to switch at the top. Like he's going to get burned. Like, how do you not realize that? Then you have an offensive coach in Terry Stotts, whether you want to say he's a winning coach or not. He knows the system. He knows Damian Lillard, obviously, having coached him, and you're sitting there getting an argument with him in front of other players, and it's like Stotts isn't going to take that. And come to find out, the front office heavily considered Terry Stotts for the job to begin with, and then ended up picking Adrian Griffin because of Giannis. Now Giannis comes out yesterday and says, "Oh no, I had nothing to do with the hire of Adrian Griffin." It's like, come on, dude, you you have influence. Like, let's not
Yeah,
kid ourselves.
from what I understand about the Giannis thing, it's not necessarily that he picked Adrian Griffin, it's that he did not pick Nick Nurse,
Right.
who was also in the running for the job, which I think is also funny because what you just mentioned that that Adrian Griffin implemented a Toronto defensive system. So they
Right. So it's
basically got just like a worse version of Nick Nurse to coach the team.
and then that's where I kind of push back to Giannis because with Giannis, it's like, okay, how much better do you want to get as far as a player, other than being able to bulldoze and transition and things like that? Because we see it with Embiid. Embiid's getting mixed up offensive looks that basically has changed his game for the better this year. The
Hmm.
system with ball movement is better in Philadelphia, and it's under Nick Nurse. So
Oh
imagine what
man.
could have happened with Milwaukee having Damian Lillard, and then you add Giannis and being able to mix up different schemes on offense with Nick Nurse.
Yeah, I can't wait for Doc Rivers to get his hands on Giannis.
Oh my God. Yes.
I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
just think the last 24 hours have just been hysterical.
And the crazy thing is now they're paying the $8 million remaining to Budenholzer for this year. Then they're paying the
Hmm.
remaining 4 years at $4 million, or 3.5 years at the $4 million per year to Adrian Griffin. Now Doc Rivers is signed till 2026, 2027.
Oh
That
man,
is
it came out. The
crazy.
numbers came
Yes.
out.
Yes, the numbers came out about an hour ago. Yes, he's got a $40 million contract through the 2026-2027 season. That
At
is
least it's not a Monty
crazy.
Williams level, because you would have thought, that he'd be
Yeah,
in
that's
that.
true. True. It could be worse. Um,
Yeah.
Wrapping up the Bucks, anything stand out with Lopez, Portis, and Jackson Jr.?
Not particularly. They did go down in rating in the last couple. Like Lopez went down to an 81 in the last update.
Hmm.
Um, they've just been kind of fluctuating around this 80 to 82 range all year. The guys who didn't change, like Damian Lillard, 92 overall, and his production this year has been lower than it was in the Portland years. Probably a big reason why Adrian Griffin is no longer the coach of the Milwaukee Bucks. Over this update cycle, Dame only shot 42% from the field, 33% from three. Did average 26 points and 7 assists, but overall, production down. And, the Giannis and Lillard offensively have been kind of separate entities. Like the two man, when you got those guys together, you would have thought that they would have had the best two-man game in the NBA, and that just hasn't happened yet. It's been Giannis getting his and then Dame getting his. So hopefully that's one thing that Doc can bring is just like I expect Doc Rivers' approach to coaching is the keep it simple, stupid method, and hopefully that's all the Bucks need moving forward.
Yeah, I would hope so. I mean, Doc Rivers isn't going to change much coming in there. But what I
Yeah,
found that,
one more thing on the Bucks before we move on is Adrian. I think when he took the job, Drew Holiday was the point guard on the team, right?
mhm,
So having a switchable system when Drew Holiday is your point guard, that makes a lot of sense. But as soon as they went from from Drew to Dame, you kind of have to just throw that out the window. The Bucks were not going to be a good defensive team this year. They just don't have the personnel. Their
right.
starting backcourt is Dame and Malik Beasley, and then Chris Middleton. Once upon a time was a good defensive
He's
player,
hurt all
but
the
at
time
age
now. You never
32
know
with
when
the
he's
injuries,
playing. Yeah,
yeah, it's
it's
it's too much on. They have a two-man defense, and even what drove the Bucks is they even before Drew they had Eric Bledsoe. They always had a strong point of attack defender. So to go
mhm,
from Drew to like one of the worst defensive point guards in the NBA in Dame, I think that's ultimately what did Griffin in the end is he took the blame for something that really wasn't his fault.
right. And I just found it funny, just wrapping up. Doc Rivers was the consultant, basically,
Oh
even though
yeah, yeah.
it's like, wow. Like, hey, who do you think we should hire for the job? Me?
Uh,
Like, I would be
yeah,
great.
yeah. I guess one last thing on Griffin is, Terry Stotts. He was supposed to be the lead assistant, and they let him go. It took 2 months for Griffin to find his replacement. Like, and he didn't want to bring in any experienced coach. He brought in, I think, some guy from
Trevor
Australia
Gleason
that
from
he'd worked with
Australia
before,
that he worked with in Toronto. He's an
and
offensive guru, but it's telling you didn't want to bring in an experienced coach because you didn't want to get replaced, and you still got
yeah,
replaced.
and yet the guy who replaced him was the guy who was, and yep,
Yeah, we'll see.
yeah.
We'll see. All right, let's jump over to the Chicago Bulls. Very limited change. One total change for the Bulls that I found. Ayu Desunmu goes +1 to a 76. Anything that you want to talk about with the Bulls other than just Desunmu?
Oh God. I love these one player updates because it makes it really easy to analyze in. Desunmo's been great during this rating cycle. 13.3 points per game in 26 minutes off the bench, shooting 60% from the field, 56% from three, 92% from the free throw line. Not difficult to see why he went up in rating. He's had an expanded role over the last month with Zach LaVine in and out of the lineup due to injuries. And I'm curious to see whether or not the Bulls make a move at the deadline, as Levine's been on the trade market. DeRozan's got a contract. Is he going to be hit restricted, unrestricted free agency, or are they going to be able to agree to an extension?
At this
Alex
point,
Caruso,
I don't know
another
that you can
player on the
move
market.
Levine. What do you think? Do you think you can
I'm
move
sorry.
Levine? Do you think they can move Levine? That's the
I don't
biggest
think they
question
can
mark.
move Levine. I think
Yeah.
he's, especially at the level that he's played this year, his contract is just too onerous. Unless you were, let's say, the LA Lakers trading Austin Reeves for Zach LaVine, like straight up, I can see that being beneficial for both teams because the Bulls, they get out from the LaVine contract, and LaVine is essentially a better version of Austin Reeves, I think.
hmm I don't know that Jeannie Buss will sign off on because she's like a fanatic for Austin Reeves. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know what it is with it, but and LeBron's back kind of Austin Reeves a little bit too, but obviously Levine, I believe he's a clutch client, so that would
Mm-hmm.
that would fit into the whole LeBron narrative of he wants to go get
Yeah,
players.
DeRozan's really been the guy that's been linked to the Lakers over the last couple of years,
hmm
but the Bulls have to do something,
Yeah, but as we've seen in the past, we all say, "Hey, they got to do something," and then they
and
stand
then they
pat
don't.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and then they'll let DeRozan walk, or worst case scenario, sign them like they did Vucevic, and it's like, all right, let's just repeat this pattern all over again. The only
Yeah, one
really
one thing.
go ahead.
Well, one thing I saw a few weeks ago was they mentioned Lonzo Ball could be a trade option because
hmm
insurance will cover his contract. So whatever team that acquired him would actually save like a boatload of money. So you might be able to move off him. And ultimately, Lonzo Ball's injury was the mechanism that like did this team in, as they were
Yep.
never really able to replace him. And his cap hold is just so big that well, I guess really Nikola Vucevic was kind of, the big three, but none of them can defend. That also kind of did it. But
Right. And as good as Kobe White is, he's not really a starter in my opinion at point.
yeah, no,
He's more of a six man. But
exactly.
it is what it is. I guess if you have a bad enough team and enough injuries, you kind of have a breakout season. I am not, for the record, a Kobe White fan, but kudos to him for having a good year. It's just to me on a bad team, but it is what it
Oh
is.
yeah, 2 years ago, you would have thought that like he might have been playing himself out of the league at this point. So he's worked on his defense, his playmaking, etc.
hmm
Um, he's a rotation caliber guard, six fringe starter, 6 man.
hmm
Definitely not knocking him, and also a difficult spot because DeMar DeRozan is definitely a specific player to play around. Because he's so ball dominant on the wing.
hmm
That asks a lot from a lot of different things from your point guard than usual.
Yeah. Let's jump over to the Cavaliers. Some changes for them. Kind of the rotation guys that have been filling in for Mobley and Garland being out. So we got Max Strus going -1 to a 76 overall, +1 for Sam Merrill to a 76, +2 for Georges Niang to a 76, and +1 to Dean Wade to a 74. And what do you think of those guys? Specifically Sam Merrill, since he's actually healthy and actually playing now.
Oh yeah. Uh, Big Sam Merrill fan. Um, Dating back to like, when I used to really break down these guys pre-draft. I when he was like I think he was the 60th pick the year the
Hmm.
Bucks drafted him.
Hmm.
I just loved watching his game. One of those slow-footed guys, but he really has a strong basketball IQ and a phenomenal shooter. Over this update cycle, which was only 5 games for the Cavaliers, but he averaged 16 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists in 26 minutes per game, 51% from the field, 48% from three, and did not miss a free throw. Um, yeah, just really solid guard play, and the Cavs have really needed it with Darius Garland out for the last month.
Yeah, I think with Miro, you got like the combination of Miro, Craig Porter Jr., like those guys. Craig Porter Jr. to me is going to be one that eventually gets converted or should get converted to a standard contract.
Yeah,
Being that Ricky Rubio obviously retired, that opens up a spot. Right now, Pete Nance is on a 10-day. That's just as to me as a homage to his dad and his brother previously playing on the team. It's like, hey, you're doing good in the G League this year. Let's give you a shot, and it'll be maybe another player in there before the trade deadline. But um, looking at Georges Niang, I thought he's had a good last few games shooting the ball.
oh yeah,
Pretty
he had
well.
33 points on 13 of 14 shooting, 5 of 6 from three against the Milwaukee Bucks in a 40-point win on January 17th.
And we wonder why Adrian
And
Griffin's
that's
not there
basically
anymore.
where this +2 comes from.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, it'll
Over
be
this
interesting.
cycle, 16 points, 4 rebounds, 58% from the field, 49% from three in 23 minutes per game.
And Max Strus has kind of been the opposite. He's been abysmal shooting the ball
Yeah,
lately.
Max Drew's just very erratic player in general.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll be interested to see. It's in it to me. It's so their defense has actually been better without Mobley on the floor. And looking at Mobley as a player, you kind of look at, okay, how does he fit long term next to Jared Allen? Obviously, Jared Allen was thrown out in various discussions, and at this time, it's all smoke screens as far as trade rumors go. But overall, you have to look at, is it going to be Mobley or Allen kind of manning the center spot? In my opinion, just because they'd be better off having a stretch four next to one of those guys manning the center spot. And then, of course, Donovan Mitchell's situation looms in a couple years. So we'll see what happens with Cleveland. But it's good to see some of the middle tier rotation guys get some love for the update.
Yeah, really disappointing that Evan Mobley in his third season really hasn't shown a ton of growth offensively.
Mhm.
Um, he's shooting 57% from the field. As a rookie, he shot 51%. So he's gotten better as an interior scorer, but really his ability to stretch the floor is going to dictate how well he fits next to Jarrett Allen. And he just not has not progressed as a 3-point shooter at all. He's 2 for 10 from three on the year in 21 games. The past 2 years, he hit 23 as a rookie and then 22 as a sophomore. So his three balls actually regressed a lot.
Yeah. Like I said, I'll be interested, especially with the trade deadline coming up too. Like, are they going to be like buyers to get a better wing in there? Obviously, they have Karis LeVert, but he's kind of erratic as well as far as scoring wise. But we'll see.
Yeah,
They've
would
got
you consider trading Darius Garland?
I, I've had other
Because
people ask me
Donovan
that.
Mitchell,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I've had other people actually ask me that, like because Mitchell's played so well on the ball at the point guard spot. Like you could probably
Yeah,
get the most value for Garland. It would be intriguing. Like, what if I know it kind of got refuted for New Orleans, but what if you were New Orleans and you like pushed really hard to go get a Darius Garland, but you had to package somebody like a Herb Jones and like another piece or so there. Like I think that would be beneficial for both sides. just because you get a defender for Cleveland, you get another guy that can kind of score a little bit for New Orleans, and is
Yeah,
younger than
I mean,
C.J.
I guess I
McCollum.
wouldn't do that as New Orleans because I wouldn't want to pair Garland and CJ. That kind of
Right.
just creates the
True.
same problem that the Cavs have.
True.
No, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a problem um, for the Cavs when Garland's healthy, but I think Donovan Mitchell's just proving like long term, once he turns 30, he's going to be playing point guard. You know,
Hmm.
that's just a long term position. He doesn't have the size to play two guard forever. So you know, I think they have a surplus at the lead guard position, and because they also have guys like Craig Porter Jr. You know that can come in, and he looks like he's going to be a really good backup moving forward in his career.
Hmm.
You know, I just think that they probably need a more reliable wing. Shocker, right? That's been the story
Yeah.
for the Cavs ever since they drafted like Isaac Okoro.
Right. He's not been bad this year though. Like he's
Yeah,
been
no,
better.
he's fine. Like I think he's going to have a great career as a reserve. Just as a starter, he's kind of a little stretched.
Hmm. All right, going over to the Boston Celtics, just one quick change for them. O'Shea Brissett goes up one to a 73 overall. What to me it was there wasn't really a lot they could do where the ratings are as far as the Celtics go because they already upped Derek White in the last update. Um, Porzingis maybe could have went up one, but just looking at 18 points a game, what 6 rebounds I believe.
Hmm.
It's really not going to get it done to kind of put you in the territory with Bam and Domantas Sabonis. So what there to me there wasn't a lot of movement to be had on their behalf. What do you think?
Yeah, and that's okay. Like the Cavs are a very top heavy team in general, so there's only a handful of guys that even play significant minutes for them. O'Shea Brissett is not one of them. Uh,
Right.
during this rating cycle, played 4 of their 6 games, shot 56% from the field, 40 from three. So I guess that's how he went up. But like that's on such minimal. That's 16 shots that he took during this cycle. And that's you know kind
Very
of scratch.
minimal.
He probably
Yeah.
went from like a 72.8 to a 73.2 or something. You know, it's not like a full
Right.
rating point or anything like that.
Yeah.
Um, who do you think of the All Stars on this team, or who on this team
Ooh.
would you take to the All Star team?
If you asked me this 3 weeks ago, Derek White would have been on there. Um,
Okay.
being that he's kind of trailed off a little bit in the guard heaviness of the East, as far as you got to fit Dame in there, you got to fit Donovan Mitchell. I would definitely go Tatum, obviously. I think Porzingis should make it as a second one if you're going to choose, but it's where I kind of teeter because I I feel like somebody like a Trey Young with his assists should get consideration. Bam Adebayo, obviously being the big man, like for being the guy for the Heat because Jimmy's missed so many games. You got to fit other guys in there, and so it's hard for me. I definitely say Tatum. If I had to pick a second one, it'd be Porzingis, but even then, he's kind of having to line up against 3 or 4 others for competition. What do you think?
You know, I love Trey Young, but also fuck Trey Young. You know, Derek White, he's really put in the work. Similar to like you remember when Kyle Korver made the All Star team,
Oh
and he
God,
didn't really deserve it, but
yes.
also like he had a phenomenal year, and they wanted to recognize that the Hawks did something special.
Hmm.
I think that's kind of what we want to do with the Boston Celtics. They're having a fantastic start, and White's 3 point shooting, he was a lot better earlier in the a couple of weeks ago. He was at like 43%. That's down to 40% now, but that's still a lot better than he's done during the course of his career. He's an all defensive guard. That backcourt of Derek White and Drew Holiday is just nuts defensively. Um, and yeah, I do think Porzingis though is definitely gonna make his second All Star team.
I believe
Yeah,
so.
and that was he hasn't been an All Star in like the last time he made the All Star team was 2018 before he tore his ACL. So
Right.
A lot of the reasons why he didn't make it after that were just he wasn't able to stay healthy or on the court. This year he's played 32 games.
Hmm.
He's missed some time for Boston, but should be healthy enough. And also, the crop of potential All Stars in the East is not really what it is in the other conference. I would say.
Right. Right. Okay. Let's jump
Yeah.
into.
Also, the fact that
Oh.
we're giving Derek White All Star consideration maybe also speaks to that fact.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump to the Clippers. They had a couple top end changes with Paul George going +1 to a 90. That's long overdue, in my opinion.
Hmm.
Russell Westbrook gets the +1 to an 81. And then Amir Coffey, who has been in the rotation lately, goes +1 to a 73 overall. Anything there for the Clippers that you want to talk about?
Paul George has been solid. He dropped 38 points against the Oklahoma City Thunder on January 16th, 15 to 24 from the field, 6 to 12 from three in that one. For this rating cycle, which again, only 5 games, uh, 24 points per game, 5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 50% from the field, 46% from three, 83% from the free throw line. Generally, if a player shoots well from three, their rating is going to go up. That's the way that 2K operates because they don't change very much during these updates.
Yeah. We talked about one gripe I have with the Clippers roster, the way it's set on the official roster, is you can't have PJ Tucker and Bones Highland higher than Terrence Mann, who is a 73 overall, by the way, and is the starting
Oh
shooting
my
guard.
God.
At least get him to a 75 if you're going to knock him down. Because what did he start the year at? Like 76, 77, something like that.
Terrence
And
Mann,
yeah,
he started at a 76.
76. So he goes down three over the year. And yes, he's going to take a hit because obviously you have dynamic scorers in Kawhi, Paul George, and James Harden. Um, but he shouldn't go down to a 73 and be lower than Tice, Highland, and Tucker. Like this is not
Yeah,
that, that
that is, I mean, so the shooting guard, he did, I think he got his position changed, right? Where did he start the year at?
small
He actually
forward.
started the year at point guard,
Oh, point guard.
funny
That's right.
enough.
Yeah, 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 that's right.
He, and he plays every position. I love Terrence, man. But at shooting guard, that actually reduces his overall rating a little bit. What they
Hmm.
should do is upgrade his intangibles rating to compensate for that, but they only have that at a 60.
Hmm.
That would be one easy way for them to get his overall rating up. And then just looking across the rest of his attributes, like he's only got a 71 speed. That's probably bogus. 62 help defense. Just a bunch of attributes that they never update. It's really, what is a guy shooting from three? And Terrence Mann has not been shooting the ball well from three, so that also partially explains why his rating is so low.
Yeah, if you bump him up to 80 intangibles as a starter, he goes to a 74. Even
Mm.
bumping his speed up to 75 and acceleration to 75 doesn't change anything there.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, he has not had a good year, but I have him at a 76 in my roster, for example.
mhm.
Just being, the start. He's the starting two guard, and he's better than guys like Amir Coffey and some of
Right.
the other guys out
Yeah,
of the
like
rotation that you mentioned.
yeah, PJ Tucker is a trade candidate anyway, but still, like he should
He's
be.
not. There's not a 1 point difference between Josh Primo and who doesn't play and Terrence Mann.
Yeah, unless we're looking at Josh Primo G League stats, I don't think that he should
Yeah,
even be in the discussion. All right, let's jump over the
exactly.
Grizzlies. For whatever reason, it changed the position thing. There we go. Okay. Memphis Grizzlies get some rotation player changes. Luke Kennard goes +2 to a 77 overall. He's now starting at the point guard spot, I believe. Vince Williams Jr. goes +2 to a 76. Zaire Williams +1 to a 74. David Roddy +1 to a 74, and then Gigi Jackson goes +2 to a 72 overall. Anything to note, specifically Vince Williams Jr. and I guess Gigi Jackson, since the other guys play pretty regularly.
Oh man, I'm clicking through all these random role players' game logs real quick. All right, so Vince
Yeah.
Williams, for this rating cycle, 16 points per game, 6 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 1.7 steals in 33 minutes per game as the starter. 53% from the field, 46% from three. I feel like I say this on every single
Right.
time one of these guys goes up, like that's their exact field goal and 3 point percentage, and then 83% from the free throw line. Was on a two-way contract to start the year, getting an opportunity with all the injuries, and it's really good to see him establish himself as a NBA player. Luke Kennard, by the way, I consider John Conchar the backup point guard
Ah, okay.
or the starting point guard right now, I guess. But
Okay.
Kennard, his playmaking is up, so maybe you are correct. 15 points, 4.7 assists during this cycle, and 46 from the field, 45% from the three, playing 32 minutes per game. All of those are starts. Obviously, Desmond Bain has been sidelined with injury during this time, so the Grizzlies, yeah, woof. Let's go to GG
Hmm.
Jackson. 13 points per game, 4 rebounds, 0.8 assists, but I mean, he's a G Leaguer on a two-way. And obviously, it wasn't, he's the youngest player in the NBA. I'm not expecting him to have a good grasp on playmaking or anything like that. But 13 points per game and 22 minutes per game off the bench, that's pretty solid. 58% from the field, 56% from three. So really tearing it up right now.
Hmm. One thing to note with Vince Williams, they did update because I'm looking at his defense. They finally updated his defensive ratings. He went from a previous 45 defensive consistency to an 80 in this
Nice.
update. That was the one of the big ones. Looks like help defense went up about 23 points to a 78, and then perimeter defense went from 64 to an 80. So that's probably a bulk of where his changes came from. And then looks like no, his intangibles was already a 95. So I'd have to look through even further to see what other changes, but at least the defense sticks out, considering that is his calling card for the Grizzlies right now. Even though he's scoring, it looks like the last what 7 games, it's like 16 a game or something like that.
Mhm.
Pretty decent stats overall. Even Scottie Pippen Jr. got into the game yesterday for the Grizzlies, so that's how bad it is right now that we're getting a lot of G leaguers in there.
Yeah, they don't
Um,
have many healthy players.
no, and they just got another disabled exception worth like $12 million. So we'll see what happens there. Probably some
Mhm.
trades to be had for them to get some fresh players in there once the trade deadline comes through. We'll see, but let's jump over to the Hawks. Trey Young, -1 to an 89 overall. Interesting enough, he's now in the concussion protocol. Sadiq Bey goes -1 to a 77, and then Garrison Matthews +1 to a 71 overall. No other changes for the Hawks to talk about, but what do you think of the changes for the Hawks?
Well, the Hawks have really been disappointing this year. Obviously, they thought that they were going to be making a playoff push when they traded 3 first-round picks unprotected for DeJounte Murray, but that just hasn't been the case. They fall to 18 and 26, 10th in the Eastern Conference. They have the number 27 defense in the NBA, which the whole concept of trading for DeJounte Murray is you're pairing a defensive guard next to Trey Young. However, I think DeJounte Murray is a plus defender at the point guard position, not at the two guard position. It's kind of a different skill set that you need.
Mhm.
And Trey Young, for his part, he's really been struggling. For this update cycle, 21 points per game, 9 assists. So he's still playmaking at a high level, but the scoring just hasn't really been there. 37% from the field, and then only 38% from three. And he did miss 3 games, as you mentioned. He's in the concussion protocols. And then Sadiq Bey, he's been awful this entire year, and he's another player that they traded a lot of second round picks for. They traded a bunch of draft equity for these guys, and Sadiq Bey filling in for DeAndre Hunter right now, but he's fallen behind Jalen Johnson in the rotation. Otherwise, like, are they even going to bring Sadiq Bey back for this rating cycle? 12 points per game, 5 rebounds, but 31 minutes per game, and only shot 30% from the field, 24% from three. Woof.
Yeah, it's it's tough because Quinn Snyder is a certain type of coach that wants players to play a specific way. That's why you see like AJ Griffin, even though he had personal reasons of why he was out, he's not in the rotation because he's not
Hmm.
that great of a defender. And so there, it's hard to kind of fit him in there. You got your first round pick in Kobe Buffkin that doesn't even, he's lighting up the G League, doesn't see any time in the NBA so far. But I
Mhm.
guess, now with Trey in the concussion protocol, maybe he can overtake Trent Forrest, who's on a two-way contract at some point. We'll see. But the Hawks need a lot of stuff. I think they're a prime candidate for a trade with Murray. I hope he doesn't go to the Lakers because I don't really want to see LeBron get any more uh, help personally, but we'll see what happens. Capella might be
Yeah.
a trade candidate as well. DeAndre Hunter, Sadiq Bey, those are options. AJ Griffin, obviously. But we'll
Yeah,
see.
there's a lot of teams where their asking price is so high, and it's because they gave up a lot for these guys, so they have to like save face. But like, are if who what team is giving like three significant assets for Dejounte Murray or Zach Levine or something? You know?
Exactly. Like they gave, like, if it's me, you get like a good rotation starter and a first round pick for Murray, and you're just gonna have to take the loss that you lost out on picks. Like it
Yeah.
is what it is at this point. But if you're
The
gonna keep
difficulty with Murray to like the Lakers is they would have to send back somebody like D'Angelo Russell to make the salaries work, and the Hawks don't want D'Angelo Russell. You know,
right,
pairing Russell with Trey Young,
and
would probably be just as bad.
right, and then if you try to involve a third team, is what they're doing. You look at D'Angelo Russell's market when he was a free agent, nobody wanted him. That's why he went back to the Lakers.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like he's kind of stuck. Now we'll get to the Lakers, but I personally I think you could do better than a trade to the Lakers. I was hoping maybe he would have gone, to the Knicks to be a kind of a backcourt mate with Jalen Brunson to help,
Jalen Brunson.
yeah, to help Brunson to kind of Brunson could be more of the scorer, whereas Murray could be the defender and still score, but not be relied on to score as a secondary scorer like he is with Trey. Like there's less pressure if he goes to New York because then you have Ananobi and you have Murray as defenders with next to Randall and Brunson with Hartenstein kind of there to help clean up things as well. So I think that's a pretty good lineup compared to what the Lakers could throw out
Yeah.
personally, but we'll see. Let's jump to
Yeah.
the Heat. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just gonna say, I think I'm actually higher now on Dejounte Murray as like a starting point guard
Hmm.
in the NBA. Like back with the Spurs, he was kind of a fluke All Star
Hmm.
because he was a mid range killer, didn't have a good three ball, so he was just putting up numbers on like a mediocre team. But now that he's improved as a shooter during this Hawks stretch, I'd be interested to see what he could do as a lead guard. I don't expect him to be an All Star caliber player, but somebody in like that Mike Conley, like not Mike Conley right now, but like that just underneath the cusp of being an all-star level of point guard, I think.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
let's go to
mean,
the Heat.
we'll see. Heat, no changes. uh, seems to be a recurring theme for them and the Nuggets in
Hmm.
this update. But the big change they did actually have is Terry Rozier is now the starting point guard. They did update Terry Rozier's position to point guard in the game. What do you think, John, of the Rozier to Miami trade?
I like it? Question mark. The Heat didn't pay a big price for it. They move on from they sent a first round pick and Kyle Lowry. Terry Rozier is 8 years younger than Kyle Lowry, and Lowry just kind of struggled to fit alongside Jimmy Butler. Rozier seems like a guy who, forget who he is as a like on the court, but just like who he is as a person. It seems like a very good add to like Heat culture. Apparently, he idolized Dwayne Wade growing up, so he's somebody that wants to be in the organization, and I think that goes a long way towards a player being willing to fit in. Um, and Rozier, similar to like Kelly Oubre last year when Oubre averaged like 20 something points on kind of middling efficiency with the Charlotte Hornets. Like Rozier, his production with the Hornets this year, you kind of have to just throw out the window because he wasn't playing on a real team. He's the one guy on the guy that could actually play given that LaMelo's been out. So he's averaging on the year 23 points. And then with LaMelo being out, he's averaging a career high 6.5 assists per game, shooting 45.5% from the field. Last year, that was 41.5%. and then 35% from three. Last year, he was a career low, or not career low, because he couldn't actually shoot the first couple of years of his career, but in recent memory, 33% from three was by far his lowest. He'd done 41, 39, 70, 37 in the years prior to that. So I think on court he fits what the Heat are going to be going for. Tyler Hero, on the other hand, he's a player that I'm curious how he fits with this team moving forward. He might be on the way out because there is a little bit of overlap between what he and Rozier bring to the team.
That's interesting. I was kind of thinking about the way that Hero gets his shots off and is similar to the same kind of spaces that Rozier likes to operate in. Um, Interesting enough, Rozier didn't get a ratings update, but if you go over to the intangibles tab, you could just bump him up to an 80, which he is a starter, and it would knock him up +1 to an 83. So,
Mhm.
um, just small note there. Let's look at the Charlotte Hornets. We talked about Kyle Lowry. They get him. He's probably a buyout or a trade candidate, depending. He goes -2 to a 76. And then Brandon Miller, actually, from what they said yesterday, Brandon Miller is actually going to start at the two guard moving forward. He goes +1 to an 80, but he's still a small forward in 2K. So we'll see kind of what happens there. But what are your thoughts on Brandon Miller and Lowry changes?
Well, Kyle Lowry, he had right before the trade, he had actually lost his starting job with the Heat. He'd really struggled. Shot 17% from the field in this
Ouch.
rating
Wow.
cycle. 2 points per game, 3.6 assists in 26 minutes per game. So I think the Heat just kind of pulled the plug on maybe they saw, he'd been in and out of the lineup too, dating back to December 16th. He'd missed like 7 games, so he would play three, miss two, play four, miss two. So I think him being 37, they just wanted to make this move going forward. Terry Rozier again is on a longer term contract, whereas Kyle Lowry, I believe, is expiring.
Yes, he is.
Um, yeah, but then the Heat, they're in this situation where just because he's expiring doesn't mean that they actually have like cap room or anything to use. So you actually want a guy like Rozier because they were clearly not going to re-sign um, Kyle Lowry. But I guess focusing more on the Hornets, the reason they make this move early is now they have a chance to flip Kyle Lowry at the deadline, maybe for like a second round pick or whatever they can get for him to a contender. Otherwise, they're probably going to buy him out. Now, due to there's some, I'm not super. I know there have been some changes, but I don't have like the full specifics on like the new CBA. But I
The
think
tax
like over
apron.
the apron teams or something like that are
Yeah,
not going to
first
be
and
able
second
to.
teams, you can't make over 12 million a year.
Yeah. So because of that, Lowry's not going to be able to sign with a lot of contenders out there. So he would be limited in the teams that he would be able to go to. So rather than joining like a contender, he might have to settle for like joining a like sixth to eighth seed team, for example.
Hmm. It's
And then
interesting.
Brandon Miller.
Yeah, go ahead.
Um, let's see. For this cycle, oof, he got hurt in one of the games, and then missed 2 games. But for the cycle, 20 points per game, 5.5 rebounds, shot 53% from the field, 44% from three. So it looks like he bounced back from his injury. If we take out that 1 point game where he played 9 minutes, he in his last 4 games, 24 points, 6.5 rebounds, 3 assists, 57 from the field, 45 from three. So hopefully he will come on now that Rozier is. There's going to be a huge scoring volume void to fill
Hmm.
for the Charlotte Hornets. Although, granted, Rozier's was up a little bit because Lamelo was out of the lineup, but I think Lamelo and then Brandon Miller being the clear-cut number two option is probably going to help his production, which had otherwise been middling up to this point.
One thing interesting with Miller is 0 badges for him, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Despite, there's enough content, I think, now that we've gotten close to the trade deadline that now is when they should, in my opinion, start implementing small changes to badges.
They they have not implemented any badges in the last like 3 months.
Yeah, that's uh, s- there's a specific dev that does do the badges for those that don't know, but I'm not gonna
Hmm.
get into that. But looking at the Hornets overall, like you got a lot of people that are probably going to be traded. Miles Bridges, PJ Washington's been in discussions. Dallas being one of the teams that's really heavily looking at him. Bridges, Phoenix, and Detroit are looking at him. Nick Richards is an option for teams. Gordon Hayward, if he's not traded, probably gets bought out. So this team's going to look a lot different moving forward with a lot of young pieces. So, like you said, a lot of shots for LaMelo, a lot of shots for Brandon Miller. No clue what's going on with the back injury for Mark Williams. They're very coy about exactly what's happening. So
Hmm.
he may just be out for the year. Who knows?
Yeah, back injuries are tough, as
Right.
Ben Simmons will tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a whole nother discussion, unfortunately. But let's jump to the Jazz. They had some good changes in this one. Laurie Markkinen goes +1 to an 87. Colin Sexton goes +1 to an 83. +1 to an 81 for Jordan Clarkson, and then +2 to a 76 for Chris Dunn. Who do you want to dive into first?
Well, I guess let's start with Markkinen, who is putting together another All Star caliber season. 24 points per game in this cycle, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, 50 from the field, 42 from three, 91 from the line. Colin Sexton's probably the player who's made the biggest stride forward. He's really looking like the player that he was before he got hurt with the Cavaliers for this cycle, and he's averaging 26 points per game, 6 assists. Was not a good playmaker, until really this year. Giving them really a second playmaker out there because Chris Dunn, also in the middle of a resurgent season, but just finishing off on Sexton, 55 from the field, 53 from three, so just really scoring the ball super efficiently. Chris Dunn, since he entered the starting lineup, the Jazz's season has completely turned around. Go figure. Who were they starting before? Taylor Horton Tucker, who's not a point guard, and then
Terrible,
Keontae George, who's a rookie and also probably not a point guard.
right?
Chris Dunn, meanwhile, he missed like 2 years due to injury, and then had to spend some time in the G League to just get his spot back in the league. Had a really phenomenal stats in a small sample with the Portland Trailblazers, and then is able to make his way onto the Utah Jazz. And for this rating cycle, only 6 points per game for Chris Dunn, but shot 62% from the field, 44% from three. That's not a weakness of his anymore. He's not going to shoot them in volume, but he hits them when he's open, and that wasn't the case earlier in his career. He only plays 19 minutes per game during the cycle, as the Jazz depth is, they just have so much depth. Like Taylor Horton Tucker isn't even in the rotation. He's like he's not that bad to not be out, to not be playing. It's just the Jazz have so many guys between Sexton and Clarkson, and then what Chris Dunn is doing, etc. Um, yeah, I love what's happening in Utah right now.
Yeah, it looks like overall he went up in steal. He went from 66 to an 80 in his steals. Just looking, nothing with passing, nothing with defense. Shot IQ went +10. So changes at least for him there. Nothing shooting. Interesting. I'll have to dive in more to Chris Dunn for him to go up to kind of what changed. +5 in intangibles as well. But
Mm.
um, we'll see. I was looking at strength. No, strength is the same. Yeah, I'll have to dive in deeper with them. But yeah, the Jazz were on a roll there for a while. What was it, like 19-4 or something like that?
Hmm. Yeah,
So really good.
it's like the opposite of last season, where they
Yes.
started hot and then like became a 500 team, and then they made the trade at the deadline to they traded Conley and essentially put themselves into the lottery. It's like the opposite
Mhm.
arc for them this year, where they started off awful and now they're playing really well.
Yeah. Speaking of awful, what lately the Kings have really kind of had a downward spiral. I think they're in need of a trade. Looking at their changes, Kevin Herter goes +1 to a 77, and then -2 for Trey Lyles to a 76. That's the only changes for them. What sticks out for Sacramento to you?
Well, just the -2 for Lyles. He shot 32% and 29% from three during this cycle. So, uh, that speaks for itself. And then Kevin Herter, um, he actually came off the bench for a couple games and then returned to the starting lineup, and he's been playing really well. Granted, only 4 games for him during this rating cycle, but 19 points per game, 61% from the field, 53% from three. So it looks like he was able to get himself on track at least. Rather, the Kings' struggles this year are De'Aaron Fox hasn't been the De'Aaron Fox that he was last season, where he was on top of shooting 51% from the field, which is down to 47% this year. He was the clutch player of the year, and the Kings, he just hasn't been able to replicate that. I personally think clutch is like a little bit like circumstantial luck, because the
Mhm.
samples are so small anyway. But that's and the rest of the conference is just it's a stronger conference.
What is this, third year in a row? Harrison Barnes has no badges. Just
Yeah,
an
who's counting?
interesting. Yeah, exactly. Um, it's interesting. All right, so let's now go to the New York Knicks. Two changes for them. OG Anunoby goes +1 to an 83 overall, and then Isaiah Hartenstein goes +1 to a 79 overall. This is your team, John. What do you think?
Whoa, whoa, whoa! I don't ascribe my even when they're playing well. I don't ascribe myself to being a Knick fan. When they win the title, I'll
Okay, okay, all right. To
this
be
is a James
fair,
this is a
you
James Dolan team. Like
yeah.
they've.
To be fair, you
I've
live
got
in New
30 years of
York, so
history
there
in New
we go.
York. Like
There we
let's.
go. There we go.
I am not one of those Knicks fans who's like bing bong. I'm one of those Knicks fans who's like, no, why did we trade for Marbury? No, why did we do this? No,
Right.
no, no. But like they've actually been really, the Anunoby trade might finally change my tune, and also signing Brunson, like this Leon Rose. I just love all the moves that he's made for this team. So pretty soon I might be able to call myself a Knicks fan again. I'm just not, you put me on the spot. Wow, I wasn't really emotionally ready for that. Um,
All right.
Ananobi on the cycle, 15 points, 47 from the field, 36 from three, 96 from the free throw line. So kind of standard production from him. 39 minutes per game. So he always talked about in Toronto how he wanted to have an expanded offensive role, and then, that was never really going to happen because any team that he got traded for him was going to be like a contender who would have better offensive options than him. He just needs to be the 3-and-D guy and do what he's great at. Um, but yeah, I just love his fit on this team, and Thibs always seems to get the most out of this type of player. He's the most Luol Deng player since Luol Deng. So there you go.
Interesting for the Knicks because they had the Fournier contract as far as potential, and then obviously picks to go with it for potential
Mm.
moves. Quentin Grimes looks like he's fallen out of favor with Tibbs. So those are
Mm.
two guys that I would look at heavily
Oh,
for the
somebody
Brooklyn
fell out
Nets.
of favor with Thibs. With Tibbs.
Yeah. Apparently, it goes back to last year's playoffs where he wouldn't play with the shoulder injury, and
Mm.
you know, Tibbs didn't like that very well. So, yeah, we'll see
Yeah,
what
Tibbs doesn't
happens.
like playing more than 8 guys. So
Exactly. All right, let's go to the Lakers. One specific change for them: D'Angelo Russell goes +3 to an 82 overall. He had gone down after abysmal play, but now he's back in the starting lineup. What do you think of the Lakers change with Russell? Anything else stand out with the Lakers you want to talk about as well?
well, it's very helpful that D'Angelo Russell returned to the starting lineup, coinciding with the start of this rating cycle. So, over the last 6 games, 27 points per game, 7 assists, 37 minutes per game, shot 54% from the field, 51% from three, 94% from the free throw line. He had a 39-point game in the first game against the Utah Jazz, 15 to 26 from the field, 6 of 11 from three. They had some big wins against the Thunder and Mavericks, although some crushing defeat against the Nets by 18 points, and then the Clippers. But overall, he's been the third guy that the Lakers ultimately need. AD is a little bit inconsistent as far as a first option, and LeBron obviously is a little bit older, so they do need another guy to carry things offensively. It's just like the defensive backcourt of D'Angelo Russell and Austin Reeves, and then Taurean Prince on the wing. Like it's kind of the same story as like the Milwaukee Bucks. Like they don't have the personnel to be a good defensive team, so without them making some type of move, the team is just going to be they'll get themselves into the play-in mix, I'm sure. But as far as contenders, the West is just kind of too deep.
Don't tell 2K that the Lakers are old because LeBron James still got that, still holding strong on that 96 overall rating.
That's true.
So
LeBron has been holding strong though with his production.
he has. I
Uh,
just think that if you're going to put him in the 96 tier, it's like you got other guys that, a little
oh
bit
yeah,
better production. I think 95, maybe even slip into a 94 would be okay, but
yeah. In my roster, I have him at a 94.
mm,
Probably a few of his badges that are just perennially going to be too high on him until the day he retires.
mm,
But overall, the issue with the Lakers is, like the Lakers are out of the playoff mix at the moment, but they're going to have they have two All-Stars. Like LeBron and AD are going to make the All-Star team. It's just the rest of the
correct.
team sucks.
Right. Pretty much, yes. I think trade
Or,
candidates for them.
and Reeves and Russell, like they don't suck. It's just like they don't fit well together.
Right.
You need to have not just talent in the NBA nowadays, but like an actual cohesive unit for you to really move up in the standings.
Yeah, you have to think that Hachimura, Christian Wood, Jackson Hayes, those guys are trade candidates, but you're not going to get a lot for them in value
Hmm.
back. So it's kind of like, what do you do if you're the Lakers front office? So that's why they're trying so hard to get the swing for DeJounte Murray. But if you do that, realistically, if you're the Hawks, I hold firm on I want Austin Reeves. If I'm not getting Austin Reeves, I'm not settling for Jalen Hood Shafino, who the Hawks took Buffkin ahead of him anyway. So that shows you they didn't
Hmm.
really value him to begin with. And then like your 2029 first round pick, like what's that going to do? Like that's not
Yeah.
going to help the Hawks very much in return value. So we'll see what happens overall. The Lakers always find a way to make some move, whether it's going to be Bruce Brown or whoever they get. LeBron's going to get his way. So
Hmm.
let's jump to the Orlando Magic. Two changes for them. Um, we have Jalen Suggs going down one to a 79 overall, and then plus one for Wendell Carter Jr. to a 79 overall. What do you think of both of those changes?
Well, Wendell Carter, he's been out of the lineup. He's been hurt most of the year. He's only played 18 games on the season. He just returned to the starting lineup, and he's been effective since his last return from injury. Over his last 5 games, shooting 65% from the field, 50% from three, 17 points per game, 7 rebounds in only 26 minutes per game. So I think that's a worthwhile boost for him. And I was a little concerned when he returned and like Goga Batadze was still starting over him, even though
Hmm.
Batadze himself has been really really the hero of the Magic season because he was able to hold the position down for so long, despite like clinging to the league like a year ago. And then Jalen Suggs, he fell back down to earth. He averaged 9 points per game on 40% shooting, 32 from three during the cycle. Markel Fultz did return uh, from injury as well, so that probably had something to do with it. I don't think the fit of Fultz and Suggs has ever been all that great. So it will be interesting to see what they do moving forward because they are in the playoff mix and have a surplus of rotation caliber players. When are they going to make a move for a star, right?
Right, exactly. I think what kind
They'd
of
be a good DeJounte Murray landing spot.
yes, I thought actually seen that where I forgot which beat writer it was. I'm sure it was probably an Orlando one that threw a hypothetical out, but
Mhm.
Um, I think you kind of have to move on from Fultz at this point. I like Markel Fultz, but I think you move because you have Anthony Black kind of as that combo guard that could potentially fill that role if he could ever learn to shoot. Hopefully, it's not an Alfred Payton situation. Um, But like Cole
Yeah,
Anthony and
Fultz has taken three pointers on the season, and the last time was in October.
yeah,
He's been out, of course, but
right.
he has played 7 games since returning from injury and has not attempted a three. And yeah, he's too out of the. He's been hurt for most of his career, so it's just you
Hmm.
can't rely on him as a starting point guard. Availability is the best ability, as they say.
Exactly. I think they do have pieces. Like I'm high on Jet Howard, like as a scorer. Like he could be a
Hmm.
bench piece eventually, especially if you move off of like a veteran like Gary Harris, who's been kind of in and out of the lineup as well.
Hmm.
Um, Looking at like a Cole Anthony, I thought he was somebody in this update that was going to go down because I thought 81 for him is a tad too high, and then he struggled over the past what 7 games I think I had it written down, but I'm not
Oof,
looking
you're
at it.
right. Yeah, he had
Um,
yeah, he shot 38% from the field, 22% from three in this update,
yeah,
or
so I thought he
or during the
deserved to go
cycle, I should
down
say.
because if he's an 81, you're basically looking at he's ahead of Fultz and Suggs. Like in it, I just don't. I've always like I we could talk about that over and over and over, but it is what it is. With
Yeah,
the
that's a great point. The Orlando Magic are definitely a team that's like the sum of it's like we just mentioned with the Lakers. They're winning games because not because of their star power, but because they have a cohesive unit. Like Paulo
mhm,
Banchero at an 87 overall. I wouldn't have him at an 87, but it's just like the collective. They have a bunch of guys who would all range in like that 82 to 84 range, and they have a solid bench where nobody's really a like weak point for them.
mhm.
They're like 11 or 12 deep, so um,
Yeah, if you
that
took
doesn't
him
go
down,
well long in like the 2K simulation world, but in real life it works.
yeah, if you took Bancaro down to an 80 intangibles from his 98 currently, he drops to an 85 right there.
Hmm.
So interesting enough. But let's go over to the Dallas Mavericks. Interesting. Before I jump into who did change, Kyrie Irving didn't get touched. Like despite having a good few games that he was like on fire. I don't get that one. But Derek Lively did go +1 to an 80 overall. He is the only change for the Dallas Mavericks. What do you think of the Mavericks changes?
Let me see. Yeah, Kyrie only 4 games in this cycle.
Hmm.
Um, Actually, well, he shot 20, where he scored 20 per game, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. Only shot 42% from the field, 34% from three. So I guess that's why he didn't go up.
That makes sense. Okay, I
Um,
thought he shot
his
a little bit
his
more.
um,
Okay.
his better string of games was actually prior to this update, where he
Mhm.
dropped 44 points on the 11th, 33 on the 9th, and then 35 on the 7th. So he had a 12-point game against the Lakers on 4 of 16 shooting to ultimately bring his numbers down for this cycle. So
Okay.
that's partially maybe what you're remembering. Just like his
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
he's
Okay.
been on fire for January, but
That
he
might have
did
been
cool
it.
off a little
January
bit.
numbers. Okay. Because he did go up in the last update, so that makes sense that he was there. Lively hasn't been back for very long, so I'm curious of the +1 overall. Probably I'd have to
Yeah,
dive into it, but
he never misses his he never misses shots. He shot 90% from the field
hmm
during this rating cycle, 9 points, 8 rebounds. He had a 16 point, 11 rebound game against the Lakers on 8 of 9 shooting. So would they increase? Is his shot IQ or something like that?
yeah.
Again, the overall ratings are often kind of cosmetic.
hmm Where they get
But he's been solid on the year. He's been one of the top 3 rookies
yeah,
consistently.
where they struggled in my opinion is Luke has got to stop crying to the refs on every play.
Hmm.
Um, you've got to upgrade the power forward spot because Grant Williams isn't going to get it done, averaging like 6 points a game. Derrick Jones Jr., yes, he's had a good year, but is he really a starter long term?
Hmm.
Exum's had a breakout year, but he's been hurt with the foot injury. He's back now, but he came off the bench in the last game. They've got to
Hmm.
figure out if you're going to make a run for somebody like you could go get a PJ Washington to fill that power forward spot. Washington doesn't necessarily percentage wise in Charlotte shoot it the greatest, but I think with better players around him per se in Dallas and not having such a uh, I guess collapsible offense when it matters, I think that would help him raise his percentage as far as dunks and things like that. I think he
Hmm.
would be a good fit at a low cost for the Mavericks, but we'll see what they do. for the
Yeah, I
deadline.
think Derek Jones Jr. has had a phenomenal year, but now the issue is the Mavericks aren't going to be able to afford to pay him
Hmm.
because they don't have his bird rights, I believe.
Mm,
So he
interesting.
probably won't be back with the team, which is why they need to look for a power forward to begin with. Even though, and then Grant Williams just hasn't really fit with within their system. Tim Hardaway Jr. I'm surprised he did not go up during this update as in his last 5 games. I mean, he's been really with Kyrie out, he stepped up
Hmm.
and he's had a better year than he did the last few. But his last 5 games, 23 points per game, 44 from the field, but 43% from three, and he's really been like the third best guy on the Mavericks throughout the season.
Hmm. All right, let's jump over
And
to
yeah,
Brooklyn.
I think the Mavericks ratings in general are their role players are just in general too low. Guys like Maxi Kleber, Jaden Hardy, etc.
Hmm.
Derek Jones Jr. All these guys could probably be like 2 points higher. It's kind of the opposite problem as they're similar to the Lakers. They have 2 star players, but the rest of their role players, they're a little more cohesive than what the Lakers have going on. Dante Exum has been phenomenal as a starter this year. He's
Hmm.
like, when you look at the Lakers backcourt of Russell and Reeves, having a guy like a Dante Exum to sandwich in between Kyrie and Luca is what helps, really balance out the lineup.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Dante Exum. He just couldn't stay healthy
Hmm.
when he was in the NBA the first time. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, let's go to Brooklyn. So looking at their changes, Cam Thomas goes +1 to an 80 overall. Go figure. He's hot and cold as far as shooting, so that's pretty much what dictates him going up because it's not defense. Uh, Lonnie Walker finally back healthy. He goes +1 to a 78. And then Dorian Finney-Smith drops -1 to a 77. He has been absolutely awful shooting the ball lately, so I figured that was a warranted downgrade. But what do you think?
Cam Thomas, he. I remember I got into somebody last week on the OS board about why did he go down? Well, I mean, he had like an 0 for 20 stretch. He had a
Hmm.
0 point game on 0 for 11 shooting in the prior update, and then lo and behold, he remembers how to score the ball again. 20 points per game in this update. 49% from the field. 31% from three, so still struggling a little bit from long range. He's never going to be a great 3 point shooter, but 90% from the free throw line. Lo and behold, his rating went back up as he put the ball in the basket.
Yeah.
And then Finney Smith, yeah, like he just hasn't really. He's had a rough like last year. For this cycle, 4 points per game on 18% from the field, 13% from three. Woof. He's on the trade market, a big part of why the Nets have been in such a free fall of late. The struggles of him and Spencer Dinwiddie, who did not get touched in this update.
Yeah, he's definitely a trade candidate. Dinwiddie is for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
Dinwiddie, 11 points per game, 45 from the field, 43 from three in this cycle, but he had 3 good games and then 2 awful games. He had a 3 point game against the Heat and then 0 points on over 4 shooting against the Knicks, but then 19 against the Blazers, 19 against the Lakers, and then 16 against the Clippers. So,
mhm. I think at this point, if you're Brooklyn, me personally, I would get rid of Jacques Vaughn. I just don't think he's a good coach. Um, but nothing's really going to help them unless you get a legit point guard. It seems like Dinwiddie doesn't want to be there.
yeah, I
Um,
mean, Adrian Griffin's available.
yeah, good luck with that. But yeah, the Nets, I think obviously Bridges, Claxton's going to be interesting because Claxton's going to want a lot of money, and they have to figure out if they want to pay him a lot of money. He's asking from rumored reports like
Mhm.
23, 24 million a year, which is a lot for what Nick Claxton does and doesn't do. Um,
Mhm.
so we'll see.
Oh,
Uh,
geez. On that note, like, I just made an offhanded comment as a joke, but like, would Adrian Griffin actually make sense as a coach on the team? Like, given like, if you look at their top guys as Mikal Bridges and Nick Claxton, and then even Cam Johnson, that fits what. what Griffin wanted to do defensively.
Yeah,
Obviously Spencer Dinwiddie, not so much, but he's not a player who's like long for the team. I would say.
right. And then whether you believe in Ben Simmons or not, like he's switchable enough if he was actually healthy.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I forgot
so
Ben Simmons exists.
yeah, so like you could throw him in there as a
Well,
somebody.
yeah. Okay. At this point, I kind of consider Ben Simmons in like that Lonzo Ball
Yeah,
territory of like, even if he does come back, I just expect him to be a shell of himself. Like
right.
it's all about his contract at this point.
Mhm. I don't know. We'll see what route they go. I mean, they're probably not going to fire Jacques Vaughn right now. Like they'll
Mm-hmm.
probably just ride the season out with him and then make the change. But I do believe they need some roster tweaking for
Yeah,
sure.
I mean the team has probably quit on the coach.
Well, yeah, that's a given. Just basically, you could watch the press conferences and see some of the
Yeah.
comments that Jacques Vaughn makes, and then listen to the players as complete opposite. And then Cam Thomas is pissed because he's like, well, the reporter's like, well, why didn't you play in the fourth quarter minutes like you did in the second and third quarters? And he's like, just I don't know, I guess it's random minutes, I guess. And it's like, then they ask Jacques Vaughn, and he's like, well, he's not really a point guard, so he doesn't really pass, so I don't really know like how much we could play him in those situations. And I trust Spencer Dinwiddie and Dennis Smith Jr. And it's like, wow, so you just threw Cam Thomas under the bus to save Dinwiddie, who you're probably going to trade, and Dennis Smith Jr.,
Mhm.
who's a backup. But okay, whatever you want to do. But let's jump to Denver Nuggets. No changes. Anything you want to talk about with the Nuggets outside of the rating changes not being there?
Is there anything to talk about? Like the Nuggets are the most consistent team in the NBA over the last few years. Like
Hmm.
they rarely get hurt, aside from the year where everybody was hurt. Um, Murray, I wish like he's having an All Star caliber year, but so is like everybody else in the Western Conference,
Right.
and everybody in the Western Conference has also been healthy. So it's like hard for me to really get behind him as an All Star player. I mean, he's an all-star player, but like he's number 20 on the list, I would say. Um,
Right.
Murray, for his part, for this rating cycle, 25 points per game, 50% from the field, 39% from three, 7.7 assists per game. His playmaking is up this year, but you would need to see him do a little more in the non-Jokic minutes, I think.
Hmm. Speaking of the non-Jokic minutes, that's where I think they need an upgrade, whether it's buyout market or through a trade. Zeke Nnaji and DeAndre Jordan are not going to get it done come playoff time behind Jokic. Yes, Jokic is probably going to play 42 minutes and you don't need a lot, but I still would look for like a little bit of an upgrade if you could there and maybe one more wing player to help
Hmm.
just kind of ease things. Maybe somebody that doesn't have to play a lot but is okay as a veteran presence there, preferably maybe a shooter off the bench may help them, I think. But
Yeah,
overall, I
worth
mean,
worth
they're
noting
solid.
they cannot reacquire Bruce Brown.
Correct. Yes, good point. Yeah, because I see a lot of people throwing that out there,
Mhm.
which doesn't make sense. But
Yeah,
because
the
to
the
me,
adjustment of the playoff last season was Michael Malone just shortening his rotation and going
mhm,
with the eight-man group, or was it seven-man group? I think at times.
at times, yeah, in the finals it was
Using Aaron
seven.
Gordon as that backup center in the playoffs. So like, yeah, yes, ideally they could pick up some another guy at like the fringes of the rotation, but in the grand scheme of things, it may not matter. It's really can that starting group stay healthy? And that's going to
Hmm.
dictate a lot of how far Denver goes, I think.
Yeah. All right, let's jump to the Pacers. Miles Turner goes -1 to an 84. Ben Matherin -1 to an 80. Andrew Nemhard +1 to a 77, and Jarris Walker goes +2 to a 76. Real quick on them, they finally get Tyrese Halliburton back. I think it's two more games, and then he'll be back fully in the lineup. So we'll get to see him and Siakam kind of roll forward and see what they can do. But what do you think of the ratings changes for those guys for the Pacers?
Jarris Walker has been playing a little bit. He played 3 games during this rating cycle. 11 points per game, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, 21 minutes per game, 43 from the field, 44 from three. You know, it's not a lot to go off. I don't think they really needed to boost his. whether or not the attribute changes they made were deserved or not, I don't think they needed to go like +2 or anything on his overall rating. He's
Hmm.
not probably going to be a part of the rotation moving forward. There were 2 games that he was a DNP. CD beyond that,
Hmm.
um, and obviously with Siakam around, there's not a ton of power forward minutes anyway moving forward now. So
Well, he played small
but
forward, which
he
is
established
interesting.
himself. They're showcasing him for trades because at the end of the day, now that you have Siakam, you don't necessarily need Jabari Walker.
What was interesting is Rick Carlisle's comments.
I'm sorry,
Uh,
Jarvis Walker.
yeah, he um, played a lot of small forward,
Mhm.
which I mean you could
Oh
see a
right, yeah,
you could see a path to minutes there if Matherin was to slide down to the two, maybe if Fields moved, and then you play Walker a little bit more at the three, like in some lineups and things like that. Maybe,
yeah, that's a good point because really the only guy they have is like Aaron Neesmith,
yeah,
who
which I don't
was
trust.
starting at the 4 prior to the Siakam trade.
Correct. Yeah, it's interesting to with them moving forward. I'm trying to look at the ratings. It looks like his shot IQ went up 25.
Mm.
Um, his offensive consistency went up 25. That's your two biggest jumps right there for Walker, um, overall. But Nemhard, I think his probably goes because of the position change back to, looks like he got flipped back to shooting guard because that's ultimately where he'll play, and then he'll likely comes off the bench. Um, Matherin went down because Matherin has been, if you watch the Pacers, he's kind of struggled with this shot consistency over games. Like he's kind of like the Cam Thomas, where he when he gets hot, he's hot, and when he's not, it's he doesn't do anything else.
Hmm.
Um, Miles Turner, I'm not really sure where that downgrade of the -1 came from. I was just trying to look through to see for him, but overall,
Well,
like
let's
they,
see. Turner, 50 from the field, 30 from three. So I guess that's where
okay, okay,
the 3-point shot.
yeah,
But he averaged 17, only 5 rebounds also over the cycle, so that could be
that'll
another
do it.
area.
Yeah, that'll knock it down. Looking at them though, like Toppin, being that he is a free agent, he could be a trade candidate for them. Um, Isaiah Jackson's another one. Jalen Smith, like one of those three, definitely has got to go. Like at
Yeah.
the trade deadline to open up,
I
at
think
least
it's going to end up being Toppin because now that they have Siakam, there's no reason to like pay him.
right. Healed, we everybody's talked about him as being a trade candidate. It's like if they value him though for like a first round pick plus a rotation player, you're not getting that for Buddy
Yeah, I
Healed.
think the healed thing is a little bit overblown because he was just unhappy with his role because he wasn't starting and now he's starting. So
Right.
and they really need his skill set next to Halliburton and Siakam.
Right.
So I don't anticipate him going anywhere.
Yeah, we'll see.
They also don't have an obvious replacement because I wouldn't really feel comfortable calling Andrew Nemhard like a starting shooting guard or anything.
Right. Correct. All right, let's go to the Pelicans. Brandon Ingram goes down -1 to an 85. Interesting enough, him and CJ McCollum are at the same overall. Um, Herb Jones goes +1 to an 80. Larry Nance Jr. +2 to a 79. Jordan Hawkins +1 to a 75, and then Jeremiah Robinson Earl gets deducted 2 points down to a 73. Nothing really to talk about with Robinson Earl because he doesn't play. What are your thoughts on Hawkins, Nance Jr., Jones, and Ingram?
Well, you're not going to ask me about Jeremiah Robinson Earl? Oh wow.
No, yeah, no, he doesn't. As far as I know, he's played in what, one or two games like over the past
Yeah.
like cycle, like not much.
Yeah, that was actually me just stalling for time as I open up the basketball reference pages.
Oh, you're
Flurry
good. You're good.
Nance, averaging 11 points, 5 rebounds, 21 minutes per game during the cycle. Shot 72% from the field, 54% from three. Obviously, that's not in a high sample or anything, but
Hmm.
it looks like this is the best basketball that he's played in a while. He's obviously been snake bit by injuries over the last few years. 4 double-figure games during the cycle. Prior to this, he only had one on the season, so he's definitely been contributing at a higher level for the Pelicans. Jordan Hawkins Let's see. He had a 34-point game against the Dallas Mavericks, shooting 11 to 19 from the field, 6 of 12 from 3, and then followed that up with a 21-point game against the Charlotte Hornets. So on this cycle, averaged 14 points per game, 56% from the field, 51% from 3. So
Hmm.
he's established himself as a core part of their rotation. And then Jeremiah Robinson Earl played one game in this cycle. He had 2 points and shot
Yeah.
1 for 4 from the
See,
field.
he was overrated anyway. He was like a 75 to begin with, or actually, I
Yes,
think he was
that's a
like, yeah,
great reason why they should drop him. Now, if they would just do that to Mo Bamba and all the other guys,
yes, I agree. Because my personal opinion, unless you're like a two-way guy that's really playing a heavy amount of minutes, like a Craig Porter
yeah, like a Craig Porter
Jr.
Jr.
Yeah, like otherwise you shouldn't be over a 70, 72, 73 range at the most. Like there's no reason for it, but
Mm-hmm.
is what it is. All right, let's jump to the Pistons. Let me click back on because I clicked off.
Four
All
win
right,
Pistons.
yeah, they actually won last night. Interesting enough. Jaden Ivey goes +1 to an 80 overall. Alec Burks +2 to a 78 overall. Alec Burks has been playing out of his mind lately. Interesting note: Cade Cunningham looks like he'll be back by this weekend. Saturday they play the Wizards, so that's when I expect him to come back. Also, interesting note: Monty Williams made the comments that he should have put Ivy on the ball sooner, which makes me think that Ivy is going to end up being the point, and then Cunningham's going to be the two, which will be
Mm-hmm.
interesting to see how that dynamic goes because Cade's not the greatest shooter, despite what people say. If
Mm-hmm.
you watch, he's just not that efficient with it, but we'll see. But what's your thoughts on the Piston changes?
He's got good form. It's just he has to do too much on the ball. That
Right, which
I
would
don't
make
I don't think
sense.
he's
Flipping him.
he's not Luka Doncic, and there's no
Right.
shame in not being Luka Doncic. But as far as the Pistons changes, Alec Burks, he's been lighting it up really since Cade left the lineup, as he's had to fill in at the two guard. 21 points per game in this rating cycle, or sorry, that's incorrect. 20 points per game, 44 from the field, 49 from 3, from the line, playing 27 minutes per game, showcasing himself for trades to veteran contenders. The Knicks are a team that, Tibbs loved Alec Burks during his time in New York, so
Hmm.
that's a possibility. But the Pistons are gonna. They want to keep their veteran players around because they don't want to get the loss record or whatever. So they're
Right.
they're playing hardball for Bojan Bogdanovic and guys like Alec Burks. Monte Morris, he made his season debut last night, recording 7 points in 11 minutes off the bench. He's another guy that playoff teams are going to be looking at. And then Jaden Ivey for this cycle, he load please. 20 points per game, 6 assists, 46% from the field, 36% from three, only 63% from the line, but did have a 32-point game against the Minnesota Timberwolves to kind of highlight his last couple weeks. And yeah, it will be interesting to see how he does on the ball with Cade, taking Cade out of the primary distributor role that he's been in for much of his career. And I guess worth noting that Bojan Bogdanovic had 34 points, I think, last night. Yeah, 34 points, but did not go up in rating. And that's generally because even though this update released on the 25th, like the games from the night before typically don't get factored into the like they'll cut off the roster at like they'll start working at like 6 p.m. and then whatever they did like goes live the next morning. You know what I mean? So like the games from the night before typically don't impact the attributes or whatever. But otherwise, you could have made a case for Bogdanovich going up because for this cycle, he's averaged 22 points per game, 48 from the field, 46 from three.
Yeah, he's the one everybody wants. Interesting also, Muscala and Gallinari are now in the rotation,
Mm-hmm.
which James Wiseman still a 76 despite being god awful. Um, if you watch the games, still can't do a whole lot. Uh, Pretty much, I think him and Killian Hayes should be trade candidates, but they're also like Killian Hayes is a Monty Williams favorite, so I doubt he's going anywhere.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, it's the same story as like the Mo Bamba thing. He doesn't play, therefore his rating can't go down.
yeah,
Wiseman for the cycle played 2 games and averaged 9.5 minutes.
yeah, he should be in line with like
But
Muscala
like
should be
the
higher,
the Gallinari, like they so desperately needed shooting at their big man position.
right?
So they just moving off of the Marvin Bagley contract to just bring in two guys who are competent outside shooters who aren't going to who don't like want to post up, etc. Not that Gallinari can't post up, but yeah, I thought that was a really solid piece of business for them. More so getting off of the Bagley than anything else.
Somehow Monty Williams had a light bulb moment and decided to play Asar Thompson again, and look what Asar Thompson's actually doing. So it's like, gee, I mean, if you had actually had any competency as a coach throughout the year, maybe you wouldn't have the record you have. But
Mm-hmm.
is what it is. But let's go to the Raptors. Changes for them. RJ Barrett, who is I know your favorite player, goes +1 to an 82. And then the only other change for them is Jonte Porter, +2 to a 72. Jonte Porter has been starting kind of in name only in a sense because he comes out pretty quickly as a sub. But what do you think of those two changes?
Yeah, Porter gets the Bogans treatment. Plays the first. He'll play the first and third quarter and then never check back in.
Hmm.
Uh, Porter went up. Woof. He shot 31% from the field during this rating cycle. He was a little bit better prior to entering the starting lineup. He had like 10 points in his second game of the year, I think. But yeah, it has been a little bit of a struggle for Porter since entering the lineup. He's definitely a two-way level player, but he's in the rotation, so he should. You do need his rating up a little bit in order for him to be able to function. Barrett, on the other hand, he has been a little unlocked since joining the Raptors. Well, I don't know if unlocked is the right word. He's still kind of doing the same things, but not having Julius Randle in the way, I think, helps a little bit. He's got clearer paths to the basket. He's able to get downhill a little more in transition. So he's averaging 20 points, 7.5 rebounds, 3.3 assists, and shooting 53% from the field over this rating cycle. However, only 15% from three and 58% from the line. He had been shooting it really hot from three with the Raptors prior to that. Let me just click. Um, Prior to that, he with the Raptors, he was shooting 50% from three, 59% from the field in like his first 5 games with the team. So he definitely cooled off a little bit. And I watched a video that showed like he was more or less taking the same like diet of shots with the Raptors as he was with the Knicks. So it made sense that like eventually, the law of averages is going to catch up to that a little bit. Overall, with the Raptors, he's shooting 38% from three, but 56% from the line, which is really good. I mean, not from the line, from the field, which is really good for a shooting guard, small forward.
Yeah. Now we'll see what happens with some of their guys like Chris Boucher. He'll probably get traded.
Mm-hmm.
Possibly Otto Porter. They may reroute Kyra Lewis. Gary Trent's on a contract year. Obviously, Bruce Brown, and we talked about earlier. Dennis Schroeder was unhappy coming off the bench. Is he happy now? Like, who knows? A lot of question
Yeah,
marks.
I'd be interested to see what they do once Jakob Poeltl comes back because as I shit a little bit on Jonte Porter, he's not a starting caliber center. They really only have one of those on their roster, and it's Jakob Poeltl. He's really the guy that he's probably the most important player on the team beyond Scotty Barnes, and he just has not been there at all.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely worth noting. And he's doubtful for tonight's game, so we'll see. Hopefully, now that he's doubtful, that means that he's probably coming back in 2 or 3 games. So will be good to see
Mm-hmm.
him. Let's go to the Rockets. Jalen Green goes -2 to an 80 overall. +1 for Amen Thompson to a 77 overall. -1 for Jeff Green to a 75. And then Jay Tate -1 to a 74. What do you think? Men Thompson's only played a couple games, but more so with Jalen Green. What do you think the issues have been with Jalen Green for him to get knocked down? Because I think he started at what, like an 83 at the beginning of the year, and now he's down to an 80.
Well,
So,
Jalen Green, much like RJ Barrett, another 2K favorite. They just love their volume scorers who put up points on middling efficiency. Paolo Banchero being another player in that vein. But Green, 18 points per game, but only 40% from the field during the cycle, and then his three ball bottomed out at 18% from three. Not really the greatest playmaker in the world. 3 assists doesn't really give you much defensively. 3.7 rebounds. So he's in his third season. He hasn't really progressed much as a player. So even though he was drafted with the number 2 overall pick, I think at this point it's kind of the same conversation as Barrett being drafted number 3. Like you have to show something in order to merit having that rating.
yeah, I think one good positive note is Amin Thompson looked fantastic as kind of like the hybrid guard for them
Yeah.
coming off the bench.
Yeah, against the Boston Celtics, he had 15 points, 14 rebounds, and 5 assists. For the cycle, he averaged 8 points on 52% shooting, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 1.3 steals, 0.7 blocks. So he does a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I think once you get Thompson, you got Cam Whitmore, who's been really good this year in spurts. You got Tari Eason once he gets healthy. So you have pieces that you can kind of move forward with. Plus, veterans in Dylan Brooks and Van Fleet. Who we haven't talked about is Alperen Sengun, um, being kind of a breakout year for him. My question to you is, do
Mhm.
you think he ends up making? Because to me, it's between him or Domantas Sabonis for a center spot in the West. Which would you personally take?
You probably have to go with Sabonis just because of the record.
Hmm.
Rockets are still what are they like 11th in the conference?
I think
There's
so.
it's like a 12 team playoff race this year, which is like insane. But
Right.
Şengün for this update or for this cycle, 25 points per game, 10 rebounds, 5.5 assists, 1.4 steals, 1 block, 55 from the field, 30 from three, 73 from the free throw line. So yeah, he's here definitely. Um, Definitely at that Sabonis level,
Yeah.
and maybe puts a little more points on the board, I think, than Sabonis. And obviously, being younger, I think his ceiling is a lot higher.
Yeah. I would be okay with either one, honestly, like making it, but I kind of would give the nod to Sengun just because I'd like to see first year guys make it because he's having such a great breakout year. And it's the Rockets; they don't have
Hmm.
a lot to look forward to, but then you're kind of slighting Sabonis, so it's kind of like you know, pick which one you kind of favor. But
Yeah, it's interesting in the sense of like if you take Sabonis as an All Star, you're probably not taking De'Aaron Fox, and I think most people would consider Sabonis the second best player on the Kings.
right.
It's just a factor of like like Sabonis is the third best center, or Sabonis or Şengün is the third best center
Mhm.
in the Western Conference, and the number of point guards that De'Aaron Fox has to compete with, like Fox doesn't make it because of positional concerns, or not
Mhm.
concerns, but you need to take X number of guards, X number of front court players. So that situation doesn't happen often, where like the second best guy on a team might make the All Star team, uh, just because of that situation.
Right. All right, let's jump over to the Spurs. So Victor Wembanyama goes up again, +1 this time to an 88 overall. Trey Jones finally gets put back in the lineup at point guard. Now he's got a sprained ankle though. +2 to a 78. Jeremy Sohan goes +1 to a 78. Finally back playing power forward. Last but not least for them, Dominic Barlow +2 to a 72 overall. He kind of played some spot minutes. He is on a two-way contract. So looking at Wembanyama, obviously it's apparent that he's really good. The minutes limit is finally going to go up to 30 minutes per Greg Popovich after the last game. So we'll see what he can do in expanded minutes. Hopefully, he stays healthy. But what do you think of the changes for the Spurs?
Well. I'm glad that you had a little bit longer of an intro because I just saw that Wembanyama's badges actually went up,
Oh,
which I
nice.
think is the first badge change that I've been able to track so far while I've been doing this. He went from 8 badges to 11. So let me slide on over to my my badges in my spreadsheet. I'll go over his numbers real quick though. For this rating cycle, 27 points per game, 9 rebounds, 2 assists, 3.3 blocks, 3.5 turnovers. That's down from where that was at the start of the year. 26 minutes per game, 55% from the field, 33% from three, 84% from the line. Really, the turnovers is the only thing kind of holding him back. But yeah, I'm very happy to see Wemby get badge changes as I've had like 30 badges on him since the day he got drafted, and then
Oh,
for
wow.
2K to launch with him having 6 badges is kind of insane, and then they bumped that up to 8,
That's
like
crazy.
after I made a stink about it back in November, and
Yeah.
so let's. Do you have his badges loaded up?
I'll go to let me go to his edit player real quick. All right, got his badges. So I'm in the inside scoring right now.
Okay.
Anything changed there? It looks like he's got aerial wizards on gold, rise up on gold, precision dunker on bronze, and that's all he's got for inside scoring. Um,
Precision dunker.
yes, on bronze.
Okay, yeah, that's the precision dunker is new,
Okay,
and rise up also looks like it upgraded from silver to gold.
okay. Going over to outside scoring, he's got bronze catch and shoot, and that's the only change there for outside scoring. Um, and then
Bronze catch and
playmaking, he's got silver big driver for playmaking.
okay, that is an upgrade from bronze.
Okay. Uh, Defending bronze anchor, which is crazy. You would think that would be higher.
Yeah.
Um, Gold chase down artist,
Yep.
and post lockdown is bronze, which is crazy. Pogo stick silver, and that's it for
Yeah. This
defending.
silver pogo stick, that's an upgrade from bronze.
Okay. Nothing for athleticism. Rebounding, both box out beast and rebound chaser have silver.
Yeah. Okay, those are both new.
Yeah, that's your three changes then. Precision
Yeah.
dunker, box out beast, and rebound chaser.
Yep. And then just a few tweaks from bronze to silver. Like,
Yeah,
oh, okay, fine. Like,
I don't know how you don't have anchor at gold. Like, I don't. I mean,
I mean, the Spurs are not. You can make the argument because the Spurs are not great defensively yet.
yeah,
Obviously, he's a phenomenal shot blocker, but
right,
um, I wouldn't say that he's like Rudy Gobert
true.
yet as a drop coverage guy. But
Yeah,
like, how do you not have a bunch of shooting badges on him at this point? Like, that's
that yeah,
where his
especially
scoring
where
comes
he
from.
scores from different levels too. It's not just the spotting up.
Right. He's got a 32 usage rate,
Right, right,
which is seventh in the NBA.
right.
He's creating shots. He needs to have some type of offensive game, and
Yeah, there's definitely
they
nobody creating shots for him. They don't even pass on the ball half the time when he's got
yeah
mismatches. So he's doing a lot on his own. Um, I mean, granted, they did have Jeremy So on at point guard for a while.
yeah.
Trey
I
Jones
guess
kind of unlocked him.
on that note, Jeremy Sohan now not the starting point guard anymore. It's Trey Jones, so that actually coincides a little bit with Victor playing with an actual point guard. Of course, his production is going to go up a little bit, right?
Right.
Um,
Uh, I
Trey Jones, for what it's worth, 13 points per game, 8 assists, 56 from the field during this rating cycle. Also 35 from three, although he is not a volume 3-point shooter.
mhm.
And then Dominic Barlow, he played 5 games. He started one. He's played 19 minutes per game, 6 points, 44 from the field, whatever. He's just in the rotation, so sure, give him a boost.
Yeah. Um, Looking at the Spurs, I mean, I think Doug McDermott is definitely somebody that's going to end up traded, just because I think he could go to a contender and maybe help them off the bench. Interesting
Yeah, or
note.
butt out. I mean,
Yeah, either way. Either way at this point. Yeah, either way. who I would personally trade if I was the Spurs, just because I'm not a huge fan. If you've watched the Spurs, Keldon Johnson, he's like a bull in the china shop when he gets the ball, and it's
Hmm.
like, dude, pass. Like, I just don't get his fit on the roster personally, but that's just me. But yeah, let's jump over to Phoenix, who got all of one change, despite winning what, 6 games in a row? Was it 7 games in a row that they won? They get one
Three, four,
total ratings change.
7 games in a row. One of them
Seven
last
games in
night.
a row, and they get one total ratings change, -1 at that for Eric Gordon to a 75 overall. Now, I believe, if I remember looking at the stats correctly, Eric Gordon struggled a little bit
Oh
lately,
yeah.
so that's warranted. But to not get any other changes, um, going 7-0, I don't really know what to tell you as far as the ratings go, but maybe you could elaborate more.
Well, a big part of that has just been Bradley Beal came back, right?
Yeah, I mean, that helps
They've had
things.
all three guys healthy. Um, Bradley Beal, for what it's worth, during this cycle, 19 points per game, but 5 assists, 54% from the field, 39 from three. So he's been able to fit into what they've been doing. Eric Gordon, he's been slipping, kind of free falling since Bradley Beal returned. 31% from the field, 22% from three. So he's not really contributing at the level that they were hoping when they brought him in. They brought him in and then they acquired Grayson Allen in a trade after that, and that kind of took Eric the role that Eric Gordon was supposed to have. And Grayson Allen's been, their fourth best player throughout the year. He's having a career year. So I think the Suns, just in general, have gotten, there was no reason for their ratings to go up because they were, their top guys were already high. They just finally had a good string of health.
Yeah, let's keep Bobo at a 76, though. Interesting enough, but
Yep.
yeah. All right, let's jump over to
Oh
OKC.
my God. I mean, on that note, like Bol had 14 points in 19 minutes against the Clippers, and then 11 points in 20 minutes against the Blazers. So like,
Uh,
he's stay. He's
there's your
played 90,
justification.
86 minutes on the year
Yeah,
when he does play.
yeah,
He's gonna. Yeah, we've already litigated that before.
yeah. Let's jump to OKC. They get 3 changes. Jalen Williams, who's been on fire over the last cycle, goes
Hmm.
+1 to an 83. Aaron Wiggins -1 to a 75, and then Kenrich Williams -1 to a 74. Quick note for those two: Wiggins goes to power forward, and then Kenrich Williams goes to small ball center, which is in line of what they've been playing. So it's good that they actually changed those. Um, Interesting though, like, if you're going to change those two and you get them in line, I thought like it would be beneficial to change, like Dort kind of guards the power forwards, even though I guess he is 6'4", so maybe that's why they didn't make the change because of the. But then Jalen Williams is 6'5", playing power forward, so I don't know. I mean, I guess you could look at it however you want to positionally, but it is what it is. But any thoughts on
Yeah,
their
the
changes?
Thunder are such a difficult team to evaluate positionally. Because of course they've got two point guards who are the biggest point guards in the NBA in their starting lineup. Giddy being the tallest guy he's their point guard in a lot of lineups, and often their biggest guy on the court at 6'8".
Hmm.
Um, like Dort, I personally have him at the four, which does drop his rating because again he's 6'4". The biggest shift that OKC has made this year, aside from like Chet Holmgren being the five, is Dort was one of the least efficient players in the NBA last season. He was not too far from what Dylan Brooks gave the Grizzlies last year in terms of like his um, low efficiency on high volume, and that's they've taken away all of his on-ball touches and just given them to Jalen Williams, and that's worked really well for them. So they've had a better lineup balance just from making that shift. So I have Dort at the four because he doesn't get any pick and roll ball handler possessions at all, whereas Jalen Williams actually gets a lot.
Yeah, because he
He gets
handles the
more
ball
than
quite a
Giddy,
bit.
which makes me wonder if like Williams should be the two and Giddy the three, but it's just so like it's just OKC basketball. And then Isaiah Joe, I would have at the three rather than the two to kind of balance out the rest of them. Case and Wallace playing the two.
Yeah, because you
Neither of
can't have
those,
both of
the
them at the
backup
two
ones.
because they both play basically the same position. Looking at it from 2K standpoint, whereas
Mhm.
if you look at it, Joe plays in a lot of lineups with Jalen Williams together, and then
Yeah.
it's either um, Giddy or Wallace kind of in there as well because they don't really
Mhm.
play with SGA. That's usually when he's sitting. So
Yeah,
um,
I mean, in general, like we've small forwards have gotten smaller. You know, we've got Grayson Allen as a starting three in today's NBA.
mhm.
And
um,
obviously, you know, players aren't necessarily guarding their position either. Obviously, a guy like Giddy, um, even in lineups where he's the point guard, he's not necessarily guarding on ball. It's a similar situation with like Luka Doncic, for example.
true, that's true. Yeah, and I think Giddy personally, I think if anybody's going to go in the future, because they can't pay everybody, so I think Giddy would
Correct. Yeah,
be
he fits the least out of anybody on this team, so he's a trade
right.
candidate.
Correct. Yeah, that's where I was going with it. All right, let's jump over to Minnesota. Personally, for me, Minnesota is kind of that mixed bag. I don't look at them. I can't take them serious. Now they're I guess the number two because OKC jumped to one, but I can't take them serious because if you look at Anthony Edwards, he scores a lot and it looks great on paper, but then if you watch the games in the clutch, he doesn't he falls short a lot. Maybe overconfidence. You can say what you want. But he does get a ratings change, -1 to an 89. They keep fluctuating 89 and 90 for him. Karl Anthony Towns, same thing. He goes +1 to an 87. He had the monster game last go round or last game. It was funny that they were comparing stats of Embiid to try to get him over the hump. And then last but not least, Nikhil Alexander Walker goes +2 to a 75. What do you think of their changes?
Well, with the Minnesota Timberwolves, yeah, they were the number one team in the Western Conference. The most important thing is they are the number one defense in the NBA. And then to your point, Anthony Edwards is erratic, so they're the number 19 offense. So whether or not their defense will perform in the playoffs is going to dictate how far they're able to go. Are you going to be able to, like the Clippers, for example, the past couple years, they had a matchup where they beat the Clippers pretty handily, if I recall, a couple games ago. The Clippers, for example, don't have the lineup versatility to just like put like a small ball center out there to stretch Rudy out. I don't think that's really working moving forward. A lot of these teams have gotten a little older, and yeah, just Gobert. He's again, if he played, of these players played in the Eastern Conference, they would all be locks for the All Star team, and I think Gobert is one of them. A lot of people wrote him off after he struggled this year, but he's
Mhm.
returned to form, and given he's a runaway for the Defensive Player of the Year. I think pretty handily this year.
Yeah, I mean he's been really good. Getting Jaden McDaniels back has helped them quite a
Mhm.
bit. You got Naz Reid as a piece coming off the bench. He would probably start for a number of teams, um, but
Yeah. Also,
obviously,
who knew that Carl Towns could be part of a team that was number one in defense?
yeah, I'm not a Karl Anthony Towns fan at all. But
Yeah,
that's just
but that's just
that.
the impact of Gobert this year.
Right, right, right. Um, Looking at Nikhil Alexander Walker, like he started some games at point guard. That's probably just based on his production from minutes
Oh yeah,
standpoint.
way overdue. He's been like their, yeah, he's started a lot for them this year, playing 24 minutes per game off the bench. 73 was just way too low.
Yeah, I didn't understand why he was that low, but it is what it is. So um, to the Portland Trailblazers, so they had six total changes. So we've got Anthony Simons going -1 to an 83 overall, Malcolm Brogdon going +1 to an 82 overall, Jabari Walker now starting at the power forward spot goes +1 to a 77. Matisse Thybulle -1 to a 76. Jop Reith +1 to a 75. And then Tumani Kamara -1 to a 73. Lost the starting job to Walker. Another quick housekeeping note, Jeremy Grant is now the starting small forward. That is also reflected in 2K as they change that position correctly. So, John, what do you think of Portland's changes?
They've been playing well recently, right?
Yeah, they've won some games. It makes Chauncey Billups look like an actual competent coach.
Well, it just makes Scoot Henderson look really bad. Also,
Yeah, yeah, he's been
I
coming
mean
off the
Malcolm
bench.
Brogdon. Who knew that he was the sixth man of the year last year? Still a very good NBA player.
Yeah, yeah,
The
go
vets
figure.
are definitely willing the team to victory, and Anthony Simons entering the starting lineup also, or not entering the starting lineup, but becoming the starting point guard rather than a two guard next to Scoot. I think has helped unlock things a lot for Portland as well.
Mm.
Anthony Simons, in particular, 20 points, 4 assists in this rating cycle per game, 44 from the field, 39 from three, 87 from the line. So he has been solid. Malcolm Brogdon, 19 points, 6 assists, 45 from the field, 47 from three, 93 from the free throw line. And yeah, they have been the catalyst for the Portland Trailblazers.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it as they're gonna probably move Brogdon if they can get the right deal. I mean, a number of teams are
Mm-hmm.
after him. I don't think they move off of Jeremy Grant unless they get a Godfather offer. Um, Really disappointing is DeAndre Ayton. Um, I
He's a
just,
max player, though.
oh, I know. Yeah, I saw those comments. I was like, dude, you're scoring single digits in games. Like, no.
Mm-hmm.
Scoot Henderson, it was interesting that it's like, okay, you start the year, then you have eye surgery or have the goggles, probably need eye surgery. Um,
Mm-hmm.
not wasn't really efficient shooting outside jumpers to begin with, but now like had a stretch where he looked okay. I don't know what to make of kind of this team overall, like other than it's just kind of a mixed bag across the board. Um, I think a candidate that could get moved, even though he's hurt for the year, is Robert Williams. That would make sense because as he gets healthy on another team for next year, he'd fit better. You could probably get a piece or two back for him, maybe. But now at this point, like Rupert, Murray, like those guys should be playing in the rotation at some point. Once Sharp comes back from the abdominal injury, like he should play. Thibault should be a trade candidate. I don't, he does have a trade, I guess, what do you call it, like a trade restriction that he could veto trades of where he wants to go. So that's interesting. Um, we'll see what happens. I don't think long term Chauncey Billups is the coach for them, but that's just me. But let's go
You
over
could trade
to
him for
the
Jack Vaughn.
yeah, no, heck no. Like that, I mean,
In
that's the
general,
Spider Man in
Portland,
me.
Portland, like they have a tale of two seasons every year. There's pre-deadline and post-deadline.
Right.
A bunch of these guys are probably going to move. Guys like Matisse Thybulle make a lot more sense on contenders. Um, and yeah, the guys who they've been developing in the G League, like Repair, um, or Chris Murray. They drafted Chris Murray with a first round pick, and they've had injuries, and he's barely taken the court himself. So
Right.
I think regardless of whether or not guys like Jeremy Grant or Brogdon get traded, I do think that we're going to see a shift in priorities for the team moving forward.
As we should, yeah. Speaking of priorities for the team, Golden State Warriors. Uh, Ironic enough, Jonathan Kaminga goes +2 to an 80 overall. Kaminga seems like he's been playing really, really well for them lately, but that comes, you know, with a caveat of, he always does well scoring, but what else does he do well, which is
Hmm.
doesn't seem like a lot. But what stands out to you as far as Kaminga?
Yeah, well, I guess it's worth noting also that the Warriors had a very light update this week. They only played 4 games, and one of them was last night, so I don't even think that one made it into the cycle
Right,
as a result. Especially since the Warriors play on the West, like those are the games they're definitely not getting in.
right.
But due to the untimely passing of their assistant coach, and they had some games postponed, so very light game logs for them. But Kuminga during his 4 games averaged 24 points per game, 7 rebounds, shot 66% from the field, 58% from three, doing all that in only 28 minutes per game off the bench. And, yeah, he's a player. The two timelines. He's the face of the two timelines right now. Can they get something for him, or are they going to put him in the lineup? Like they need to make, even if Andrew Wiggins and Jonathan Kaminga do not play well together, I think you kind of have to make it work somehow because they don't have enough athleticism otherwise to like really play any like defense. Because Clay's gotten old, Draymond's getting old, Steph has gotten old. Kevon Looney's fallen off a lot this year. Kuminga's really been one of the few bright spots on the team. And yeah, I do think this overall rating change is deserved for him. But man, when are they going to drop down the rest of the guys on this team?
Yeah, you would think. I mean, just looking at it,
Cough, cough. Stephen Curry. I hate to say it.
yeah, he's not going to drop. That he gets the legacy up. He gets the legacy ratings like LeBron. Like that's not
Yeah,
happening.
this is the worst shooting season that he's had in 13 years.
That 99 three ball is still sitting there. So, I don't think that's ever going
Uh,
away.
like, can we make it 95?
Yeah, I mean, I don't get it. Like, and I get, we could go in further detail at a different time on why some of the ratings stay the way they are, but it
Mm-hmm.
just, it is what it is, I guess. All right.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, we have
I
to.
personally would snub Curry from my All Star team.
I thought
When
this.
you look at the
I
Warriors,
thought the
like,
same thing.
because
Yeah, they don't win.
there's so many guards. He's
Right.
obviously gonna make it. He's gonna get voted to the team. The coach is gonna take him.
Right.
But like as far as like, why should you take him over a Jamal Murray or a De'Aaron Fox
Right.
when his production's basically in line with those guys, if not worse, and they're in 12th place?
Right. And that's to me. That's where my biggest gripe is the NBA has got to expand the rosters to at least 13 so you get an extra spot in there. And the whole having, oh, well, you got to have three guards and, two guards, three forwards. That's just like,
Mm-hmm.
come on, we don't have to do that. Like, just make it positionless and go from there. But I guess at that point, then they'll say, well, you'll have 7 point guards on a team and, whatever. But I mean, let the best players get put on. Like that's just me. But
Yeah, we
um,
say that until the day Cam Thomas makes the team over Rudy
oh
Gobert,
god,
and
yeah,
then
yeah, then it's a problem. Like the one year, wasn't it Zaza Pachulia was like super high on the votes? Like if
oh
I
yeah.
remember correctly, like yeah,
Well,
that
the
was
year that Wiggins like got, I think the system is a lot better now than it used to be because back when the fans like had a total control over it, there was one year where some guy who was it Bol Bol or no another guy who's Taco Fall, he was in
yeah,
the All
Taco Ball,
Star
yeah,
on the All Star voting ballot. Like if God forbid he or somebody of that nature ever made it, it would have been bad. But then there were times where like when Yao Ming got voted in as a rookie, he didn't really deserve it. You
right,
can get around situations like that the way that they have it set now.
yeah. One team I can say for sure that's not going to have any All Stars is the Washington Wizards as we wrap up our final team. Kyle Kuzma in trade discussions, he goes -1 to an 81 overall. Jordan Poole gets bumped up +1 to a 79. Marvin Bagley the third, who's been playing extremely well, averaging 18 and 11 since joining the Wizards, goes +1 to a 78. And then little used Patrick Baldwin Jr., who played some small ball center in snippets, goes +1 to a 72 overall. What do you think of these changes?
Do I have to think anything about these changes?
I mean, not really. Um,
There's nothing like the. Do we have to spend time on Washington? Oh my God.
the fact that Marvin
Kuzma.
Bagley is the leading scorer since he's come there tells me all I need to know about Poole and Kuzma.
Yeah, Kuzma is a trade target for a few teams. Obviously, he's one of those guys that like they re-sign him in order to trade him later, but that also doesn't say a lot about how much he contributes to winning basketball to begin with. Averaging 18 points per game, he would make sense on a team like Dallas, but the problem is Dallas doesn't have like the assets that to trade in order to get a guy like him. So I don't know. And then Jordan Poole, oh man, contract not looking great. He goes up in this update. He couldn't have gotten much worse. I guess the law of averages pulled him up a little bit. But oof, he had a 20-point game, a 16-point game, a 24-point game, a 16-point game, and then 4 points, 1 of 7, and then 7 points, 2 of 11. So yeah, we're still in the middle of the Jordan Poole experience for that rating cycle. 38% from the field, 24% from three, 15 points per game, 1.8 assists in 29 minutes. Uh, yeah, not great. You couldn't pay money to watch this team.
No, I watch every team just because I like to know what's going on with each, but it just pains my
Hmm.
stomach to watch the Wizards.
Yeah,
I do like Tyus
Marvin Bagley,
Jones.
for what it's worth, 17 points per game during the cycle, 10 rebounds. I actually do think he is a reasonable addition for this team. They did not have a backup center. They were using Danilo Nari out of position at center. That's how shorthanded they were. So at least they have like a functional backup center who, they don't have guys who can put the ball in the basket. Fine. Like, he makes sense. It's just like, where else are we going to use our cap room while we're figuring things out?
Right. To me, they would be smart to move Kuzma, Jones, Gafford, like those guys. DeLon Wright's another one. Just go ahead and
Yeah.
move off of those guys. Get some younger pieces
Landry
in.
Shamet,
Yeah, Shamit.
there's
Yeah,
guys that contenders would like. Even someone like Denny Avdia, because Koulibaly is eventually coming for his spot, I think.
right. And I'm a Kispert fan. I'd like to see him on a contender where he can actually do more. Um, he could
Well,
he
the
could.
Washington front, they're Kispert fans themselves, so
Yeah, but I
he
wish
is
he was
one of the
on.
you'd like to see him enter the lineup over Jordan Poole,
Yeah,
but
ideally, yeah.
yeah,
Um,
there might be 30 million reasons why that's not happening.
yeah, no, unfortunately, uh, Jordan Poole should be in China, in my opinion. He's not. I just don't. I'm not a big fan. Um, you know, but it is what it is. But
You know what I
well,
am a big fan of?
what?
This video that you made. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
Oh yeah, anytime, anytime. I
Yeah, this was a
appreciate you.
blast.
Absolutely. Because I don't really break down the stats, so rather than just kind of cycling through the video and telling everybody what they could personally read, now they actually get some substance to the update. So everybody on Operation Sports that's watching, you're welcome because many people ask after the updates are out. It usually takes a few days. People are like, "Why did so and so go up?" Especially Cam Thomas last update. So now you get your answer in a more detailed form. John, is there anything that you want to plug? Your YouTube channel, of course, and then anything else beyond that?
Uh, Patreon.com/Real2K if you want to get access to my roster spreadsheet that I was going down while we were doing this video. It's super in depth. You have access to it. You could maybe talk a little bit about what you use it for, but I have all of the player attributes, tendency table, etc. Um, I've seen the document that the 2K team uses for their spreadsheet, and it always just struck me as like super disorganized. You can never find anything. So I wanted to make a document for myself that was actually functional, that I could use as a tool, not just like as something that they're just copy pasting into the ether that they upload each week. Now I can actually like hone in on the players that I'm updating, and it just gives me a really good scope of what's going on in the NBA as I update my teams. So if you have access to that, you find things like that, the more granular NBA data interesting. Give me a follow on Patreon, and I'll give you details on how to get access to that.
Yeah, I definitely want to couple that with it's well worth it. Just because if you are a fan of custom rosters and you kind of want to make your own and go off of the same scales that 2K uses, but actually follow the scales, then using John's work is perfect for that. Also, you can kind of see the discrepancies between what should be changed and what's not being changed, especially when it comes to the badge side of things, just because the badges don't hardly ever get an update unless it's the off season going into the next cycle of 2K. Whereas John's able to update those badges accordingly throughout the year as the action's going. So, highly recommend that you do that. Also, highly recommend that you like this video. Also, subscribe to the channel. I put out as much 2K content as I can that's relevant to any roster or ratings updates, any player likeness updates, things of that nature. Please also comment below if there's anything that you specifically want to see video wise. As far as the content goes, after the trade deadline, it gets a little bit light other than ratings updates. So I always take suggestions for videos. So make sure to comment below. Thanks everybody for watching. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. We're going to definitely try to do this as much as we can as our schedules allow for any future updates. So hope you enjoy it, and we'll talk to you next time.